Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We continue with the tafsir of Surah Al-Baqarah this week. We are going to start from verse 246 and cover 246 and 247, inshallah. As we explained last week, that the Surah Al-Baqarah is really about what the essence of the deen is. Surah Al-Baqarah is redirecting the believers to the essence of the deen, to the true nature of the deen, that is not just focusing on external, outside, physical actions that you do in ritual worship. Those are, of course, extremely important. But without the ruh, the spirit of what is behind those actions, without the intention, sincerity, and doing it out of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then those actions are hollow, if you like. If the intention isn't there, sincerity is not there, love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the submission to Allah, doing it out of obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then those rituals just become mere identity and culture of a group of people, simply things they do robotically. Right? So this is Surah Al-Baqarah, which really emphasizes this aspect of the deen. And the way it does that is giving us many, many different examples from the people of the past, from the nations who were given prophets and revelation from the past. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demonstrates different aspects of this failure, of this trap that people fall into from the past when it comes to the deen, when it comes to religion, when it becomes mere external, formal, legal rulings or practice without the love and sincerity, without the iman that is demanded actually by the deen. So this section, which we started last week and even previous to that, from verse 243 all the way to 251, is about such an example from the nations of the past. This story is focused around a particular group of people from Ahlul Kitab, Bani Israel, at around the time of Dawood alayhi salam, or just before he becomes a prophet, leading up to that stage. So this story, this example, this narration is about some events just before Dawood alayhi salam becomes a prophet and a king. The prophet that's mentioned in this verse, 246 and 7, is, according to many scholars, prophet in Arabic, his name is Shamud, and in English it's Samuel, which most people will be familiar with if they know something about some of the prophets of the Bible or the Old Testament. This was a pivotal time for Bani Israel. They had just been recently defeated in many lands. Their towns and cities were occupied. They were expelled from their homes. They were separated from their families. So this was a time of weakness, defeat, occupation by enemy forces of Bani Israel. And up to that point, they had been led always either by prophets from amongst them, or later on by what they called judges, right? So wise people amongst them who had been inspired or who had knowledge of the deen. They had been led by these type of people all the time up to then. This is a pivotal moment in their history, because now this is the time when that changes to being led by kings. This is the time when that changes from previously being led by either prophets or by what they call judges, learned people amongst themselves. From now on, they'll be led by kings. And Samuel is pivotal, plays a role in this, Prophet Samuel, alayhi salam. He plays a pivotal role in this. At the same time, in terms of the Qur'an and its revelation, we should also bear in mind where the Prophet ﷺ and his companions are. They are in Medina. It's the early years of Medina. They are also in a similar situation. They've been expelled from Mecca. They've been threatened to be attacked by Quraysh and their allies and the enemies of the Muslims. So they're in Medina. They've sought refuge with the people there. and they're slowly building up the Muslim community in Medina. But still, they're not at home. They've migrated, they fled Mecca, and they've left behind their homes, their wealth, their families. So they're also in a similar situation. Hence, these verses, there's a lot of similarity in terms of their situation. And therefore, these verses are, in a way, encouragement, motivation for the believers and the Prophet ﷺ at his time, as well as teaching them very important lessons and warning them not to fall into the same trap as these people did, or some of these followers did at the time. So this particular verse, verse 246, it addresses one of two objections. You know, last week the command was for the believers to fight, to defend their community, to defend their honor and their wealth and the deen, right? Usually when there's a command for a prophet and his followers to defend themselves throughout history, you'll find ordinarily two types of groups of people come about after that kind of command is given, right? Or two types of objections, or two types of groups that react in a similar way. The first group is the one who's fearful, right? They belittle themselves. They think we're too weak in number to defend ourselves. We're just simply too weak. We can't do this. This is going to be suicide. This is going to be murder. We're better off fleeing, right? We can't fight. We can't defend ourselves. We can't stand by with the Prophet. And it's better for us to save our lives. This is one reaction from a group of people. This reaction is addressed in the previous verse number 243, I believe, right? Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about a group of people who fled their homes. وَهُمْ أُلُوفٌ. They were many in number, thousands. But rather than stand and fight and defend their land and honor and houses and property, they fled because they belittled themselves out of fear, out of cowardice, they fled. This verse, 246, addresses the second group of people, right? The second group of people is those who disobey and refuse to defend the community, or refuse to obey the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even after knowing the benefits of defending themselves, even after knowing that they're the ones who wanted to defend themselves, they're the ones who wanted to fight, and they're asking their prophet, as in this verse, the followers of Samuel, they are asking the prophet, appoint for us a king so that we may fight behind him. Because remember, the followers at Bani Israel that time were defeated, were weak, expelled from their homes, their property was seized, etc., etc. So they want that back. They look at the reasons, they analyze, why have we lost? Why are we weak? Why have we been defeated? And they see that their enemies are led by kings. Their enemies are led by kings into battle. And so they come to the conclusion that that must be the reason why we lost. That must be the reasons. We are not led by kings, so they request Samuel to appoint for us a king so that we may defend ourselves, fight behind the king, fi sabilillah. So this is the kind of backdrop or kind of context of this verse. Let me just quickly read the verse. So it begins with ألم تر إلى الملأ من بني إسرائيل من بعد موسى إذ قالوا لنبي له مبعث لنا ملكا نقاتل في سبيل الله قال هل عسيتم إن كتب عليكم القتال ألا تقاتلوا قالوا وما لنا ألا نقاتل في سبيل الله وقد أخرجنا من ديارنا وأبنائنا فلما كتب عليهم القتال تولوا إلا قليلا منهم والله عليم بالظالمين. Have you not seen those chiefs of Bani Israel after Musa after Moses, they said to one of their prophets meaning Samuel here, Prophet Samuel, appoint for us a king, and we will fight in the cause of Allah. The Prophet said, would you perhaps refrain from fighting if fighting was prescribed from you? Meaning the Prophet saying, maybe if it's appointed for you, a king, and you're commanded to fight, maybe you won't fight, right? Perhaps you won't fight or refrain from fighting. They replied, how could we refuse to fight in the cause of Allah while we were driven out of our homes and separated from our children? So the followers of Prophet Samuel, they respond, there's no doubt that we will fight because we've been driven out of our homes. We've suffered huge losses. Even our families have been separated from us. We've lost our children, our wives, our property. Of course, why would we not fight? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, but when they were ordered to fight, they fled, except for a few of them. And Allah has perfect knowledge of the wrongdoers. So here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse is addressing the second type of people who react when their command to defend themselves along with the Prophet ﷺ comes. Which is, even though they know the rationale, they know the benefits of defending themselves and fighting. Because they know if they fight, they can regain their land, they can regain their homes, and they can recover their losses. They know that that is the benefit, right? But even after knowing that and demanding that their Prophet appoints for them a king so that they may fight, they're the ones who are calling for permission from Allah to fight. But yet, when the command comes, they turn away, they flee, except for a few of them. So here the verse begins, أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الْمَلَإِ مِّن بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ مِن بَعْدِ مُوسَى. Have you not seen those chiefs of Bani Israel? Mala is any group of people that has a leader. And they said to one of their prophets, appoint for us a king and we will fight in the cause of Allah. So as I said, they thought that if they appoint a king, because the ones who had defeated us, our enemies, they were fighting and they had a king leading them. We don't have a king, so therefore that's why we lost, right? They thought we would surely win. قال هل عسيتم إن كتب عليكم القتال ألا تقاتلوا. But the Prophet, he knows them very well. He knows what to expect from these followers, right? He knows what to expect from them. So he indicates very clearly that, are you going to refrain from fighting? Perhaps you will not fight if the command for fighting is given. So the Prophet, he knows them, but he's also warning them. This is both a warning that, are you serious? Are you going to wait for the command? Are you going to ask for the command to fight? And then you're not going to fight? Is that what you're going to do? He's almost indicating that A, I know what you're most likely to do, and B, this is a serious sin. This is a grave matter. Make sure you don't ask for the permission to fight, and then you refuse to fight. This is a grave sin in the sight of Allah. And that's when they respond, why, how could we refuse to fight? قَالُوا وَمَا لَنَا أَلَّا نُقَاتِلَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَقَدْ أُخْرِجْنَا مِنْ دِيَارِنَا وَأَبْنَائِنَا. How could we refuse to fight in the cause of Allah while we were driven out of our homes and separated from our children? So these followers of Samuel, they say, it's impossible. Of course we're going to fight. Of course we're going to defend ourselves. We've lost so much. How could we not fight? They're trying to give a guarantee, 100%, just responding to that doubt that they could see Prophet Samuel had about them. And the fact that Prophet Samuel was warning them that be careful, don't ask for something and then you disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they affirm that of course they will fight to regain what's been wrongfully taken away from them, their homes and their families, etc. But again, the main lesson here is that they are looking at things from an external perspective. The reason why they say, appoint for us a king, is they're just looking at externally the asbab, the means, right? They think that this is it. If we do X, Y will happen. If we have a king just like they did, we will win. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Qur'an again and again that these asbab, these causes, these means that Allah has set up, these physical laws, social laws, biological laws, whatever you want to call them, they are asbab which work most of the time, right? That, there are physical laws, right? There are laws of numbers. If there's 500 people, they're most likely to defeat 50 people. These are the norms, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the world in this way. These are His sunan. But what Allah tells us is these means only work by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They only work by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You could have the means, but if Allah doesn't give you the permission, those means will not result in the kind of result that you're looking for. It's not necessary that 400 people will defeat 50 people. Not always. As later on in the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them that how many, a small group who defeated many numbers by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah is teaching the believers that what you see in the external world, everything happens by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it's physical laws to do with numbers and strength and weakness and battle, whatever it is, whether it's authority and power, kingship, leadership, right? Authority on earth, success, right? Wealth, knowledge, all of these things people can acquire by pursuing the means of acquiring those things. But it's not guaranteed without the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore the believers are turned to the inner dimension of things. They're told to focus away, not to focus only on the external things, right? We have to look beyond the external, we have to look beyond the material, and we have to remind ourselves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of every single thing, and He's in control, entirely in control of the result. Our actions will only lead to results by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And sometimes the Qur'an also tells us what are the better means to achieve something. Just like here, we'll come to learn that. Sometimes the Qur'an will say, no, these means that you think will achieve X, Y, and Z, these are better ways of achieving that, right, with the permission of Allah. So this is what we'll also find out here. So they respond, of course we will fight. Why wouldn't we fight? Why wouldn't we defend ourselves if we've lost everything, right? They say this. But then, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs us, and this is the main lesson, main point of the verse. فَلَمَّا كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقِتَالُ تَوَلَّوْا إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِّنْهُمْ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِالظَّالِمِينَ. That this is the main point here, highlighting to the companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's telling them the story of the followers of Prophet Prophet Samuel, that they analyzed the situation, they identified externally, it must be this cause that led us to defeat, because we didn't have a king. Secondly, not only that, they were begging for a king to be appointed so they could fight. But however, when the command came and the king was appointed for them, they fled. So it is a big warning to the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Because remember, the Prophet ﷺ and his companions were not allowed to fight back. They were not allowed to defend themselves in Mecca. However, in Medina, the permission was given. But this is a reminder to the believers and the companions that don't be like these people who turn their backs once the command comes. Don't be like these people asking for something which they know is difficult to do, but then they turn their backs when the command comes. But also the lesson here further on is about not looking at the external, physical, material aspects of everything that happens. is to look beyond that and deeper, and to look to other aspects which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will explain in the next verse. So the main point of this verse was this lesson, that Allah wanted to show them that even though these people had a good reason to fight, they had all the right reasons. Even people who are cowardly would try and defend when they've got a reason, when there's some benefit, like protecting their own home or family. But look how disobedient some of these followers were. That even though they had the right reason, if anyone had a good reason to fight, were these people who had been defeated, expelled from their homes, lost their families. But still, they fled once the permission was given. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes back to continue the story. وَقَالَ لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ بَعَثَ لَكُمْ طَالُوتَ مَلِكًا. And he said to them, their prophet said to them, Allah has appointed Talut to be your king. Talut to be your king. So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going back to the story. The last part of that verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَمَّا كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقِتَالُ تَوَلَّوْا إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِّنْهُمْ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِالظَّالِمِينَ. This is like a put in brackets, if you like, because Allah is giving you the main point of the previous verse. But He's telling you something that's going to happen in the future. They're going to turn away when the king is appointed for them. Not all of them will fight, which will come later. But now He's going back to, when they've asked Samuel to appoint for them a king over them. So the Prophet Samuel says to them that indeed Allah has appointed for you Talut, right, as a king over you. And this Talut, his name is in Arabic Shaul or King Saul. You may have heard of this name as well from the Old Testament, or who's mentioned in the Bible, King Saul. So they protested immediately when they said Talut, when the Prophet said to him that Saul has been appointed, Talut, that's his name, he has been appointed as a king. They said, what did they say? How can he be our king? قالوا أَنَّا يَكُونُ لَهُ الْمُلْكُ عَلَيْنَا وَنَحْنُ أَحَقُّ بِالْمُلْكِ مِنْهُ وَلَمْ يُؤْتَ سَعَةً مِنَ الْمَالِ. How can he be a king over us when some of us are more deserving of kingship than him? And he has not been blessed with vast riches. قال إن الله اصطفاه عليكم وزاده بسطة في العلم والجسم والله يؤتي ملكه من يشاء والله واسع عليم. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues. He says that the prophets replied to them. He replied, Allah has chosen him over you. Meaning Allah has chosen Talut, Saul, over you people. And not only that, He has blessed him with knowledge, ilm, bastatan, fil ilm, wal jism. He has blessed him with knowledge and physical stature, with a strong physique. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاللَّهُ يُؤْتِي مُلْكَهُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants His kingship to whomever He wills. And Allah is all bountiful, all knowing. So again, we see the focus here. They said that Talut, the one who Samuel is saying, Prophet Samuel is saying, that Talut is the king appointed amongst you. They said that Talut was from a very poor background. He came from a very ordinary family. In fact, some reports say he was just a farmer. He used to be a farmer, very ordinary background. He was poor. He wasn't from the elite. He wasn't from their leaders. So they immediately saying, how can this person, such a peasant background, poor, he's not from amongst the leaders, he's not from the elite of us. How can he be the king? Because again, they're looking at materialistically, because their idea is the king has to be really rich. The king will spend from his wealth on preparing the people with the weapons needed, with the horses, with preparation for battle, to regain their land, to recapture their properties and bring back their families who are held as prisoners with the enemies. So they're looking at it purely physically. You know, whoever's the king must be a leader from amongst us, must be from the high level ranking of society, and must be extremely rich, must be wealthy, and have that ability to pay for what we need to do. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His response, you know, He says that, the Prophet says that, Inna Allah astafahu alaykum. So first of all, the Prophet alayhi salam makes it clear to the followers of Sami'un that Allah has chosen him. It's Allah who chose him, not me, not you. It's the choice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then He gives them, this is in response to them saying, we reckon it should be one of us. So if they were given the choice, they would have chose one of them. So their judgment leads them to one of them to be the king. Now, Prophet Samuel is saying, Allah chose, His choice, His judgment, His criteria leads to Talut being chosen as the king, Saul, right? Now this is in response to them saying, we should have been, one of us should have been. So he responds that as a response to that question. Then the Prophet Samuel says, and Allah has blessed him with much knowledge and physical stature. Ilm and jism. In terms of ilm, they said, what knowledge was he blessed with? They said, it's the knowledge of how to lead a community, how to lead an ummah. So leadership, knowledge of leadership, managing people, especially when a people are in a low point of their history in terms of their economic, military might. Everything's weak. It's a low point in their lives or in their history, if you like. In those straitened circumstances, to assess things properly and to give leadership, direction, and solutions to problems, and knowledge of how to organize and strategize for battle and all of these strategic things, as well as to keep everybody happy, there is a specific type of knowledge required. And the Prophet said that he was blessed with much abundance of this knowledge. Right? That's number one. The second thing he said, physical stature, physique. He was strong, tall. This is because when they go to battle, the people they were fighting were physically superior than them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose somebody who is equal or similar to the enemies in terms of physical strength, so that he is also a role model for the followers. So they gain courage and consistency and persistency in standing behind him and fighting. So they have the moral courage, if you like. So these were the two qualities that were required for the time. That would suffice. Notice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the Prophet didn't respond to them when they said he hasn't been given wealth, right? Allah didn't say, okay, I'm going to give him wealth. No, he responded instead by saying, I've given him abundance of knowledge and physical strength. So in other words, these two things replace wealth. What you would achieve, wealth will come, but before wealth you need these two things. These two things in this particular time to lead this community is far more important than wealth. And if somebody has the knowledge of how to lead and manage, govern their community properly with justice, with knowledge, with proper decisions, and they have strength, physical strength, then the wealth will follow anyway. If they go and defend their lands or go into battle, the wealth will follow anyway, because the wealth doesn't come from the king, it comes from the people. They're the ones who donate. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't address their question about wealth. He simply said, pointed them, remember I said that sometimes Allah will point towards the better, more effective means that's necessary to achieve something. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing exactly that. He's saying the means that you require is not elite leadership from amongst the elite amongst you, and it's not wealth. The means that you require now is physical strength and knowledge, ilm, how to manage the people, how to motivate them, how to encourage them, how to organize them, etc., and knowledge of how to win battles. That's what's required. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the Prophet, says that he's been given these things. Then, as the next line within the verse, وَاللَّهُ يُؤْتِي مُلْكَهُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَاللَّهُ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. That Allah gives His mulkahu, His kingdom or kingship, to whoever He pleases. So some of the Mufassirun, they said it could be that the Prophet Samuel is saying this to his followers, right? Or it could be the words of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one who's saying this. Either way, the main lesson here is that leadership, kingship, political authority, all of these things, the decision of who is going to be leader anywhere in the world at any time is not down to individuals or people. It's totally the decision and authority and dominion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gives it to whoever He pleases. It may be a believer, it may be a non-believer, it may be someone who's full of justice and fairness and good leadership, it may be the opposite. But He gives it to whomever He pleases for a wisdom that He alone knows. He is the one who decides who comes to power and who is deposed of power. As other verses in the Qur'an, He gives His mulk to whom He pleases, and He takes away the dominion, the kingship, the power from whoever He pleases. So this is a reminder to the followers of Samuel who were complaining that, why is it gone to him? You know, he's a peasant, he's a farmer, he's got no wealth, he's just a poor, whatever. How's that going to benefit us? Why should he become the leader? That's not going to meet our criteria, our objectives, what we were looking for. Should have been one of us. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not only explained to them the wisdom of giving Talut, Saul, as the king, because he's been given the knowledge and the strength, but over and above that, it's entirely Allah's decision who He gives kingship to, who He gives political authority to, who He makes a leader. It's in the complete decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Believers must always remember this. This is the lesson, because sometimes throughout history you will find, of course there are means and things like that in play, but even now and in the past, people think that we can do something to gain political power. It's because of my clever campaign, it's because of my qualities, it's because I'm such a good leader, it's because I'm so brilliant at maneuvering and outmaneuvering everybody else. That's why I've become president or prime minister or king or queen or whatever. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says very clearly, وَاللَّهُ يُؤْتِي مُلْكَهُ مَن يَشَاءُ. He's the one who gives political authority. He's the one who makes a king or a prime minister or a president, and He's the one who deposes of them. It's entirely in the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's no argument back. You know, why did you give him this? He hasn't got this. Even if he hasn't got these qualities, it's the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we have to submit to. This is what is being taught here. And this is also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala adds, وَاللَّهُ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ, that Allah is all bountiful and all knowing. He has perfect knowledge, and He is so generous and bountiful. Meaning, in His choices, when He decides somebody to become a leader or king or prime minister or president, He gives the mulk to whoever He pleases. But people may think that, subhanallah, why are we still suffering? We haven't got a good leader, etc., etc. Or people may think, like the followers of Samuel, that why did Allah make this person a leader? It should have been me, or it should have been this person. This person's much better. he or she is more deserving. All these thoughts come in your mind, right? Because you're thinking, why is Allah depriving us of a Khalifa? Why is Allah depriving us of a leader who will bring back the glory days for Islam, right? You may start complaining to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that, Wallahu wasi'un alim. Whoever He's made for the time being leader or in charge, there is a wisdom behind it. Maybe it's to test you. It doesn't mean that leader is good. It doesn't mean that leader is going to go to Jannah. It doesn't mean anything. It could be simply you as a community are not ready for what you want. It could be a test, a trial, a tribulation. What the Mufassirun said about the followers here of Samuel and the situation that they were in is they had turned away from the Torah. They had turned away from the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They had turned away from the teachings of their prophets. Hence, they were humiliated by their enemies. Right? That's the main teaching here, because the deen is obedience to Allah and His messengers. That's the deen, obedience to Allah and His messengers. Once you turn away from that, you will see the consequences physically, economically, socially, politically. As a community, you will see the effects of that. So unless you recognize that, unless you return back to Allah and His obedience and obedience to His messengers, that situation will not change. Even if you think it's because I don't have a good king, I don't have a good ruler. No, it's because you've turned away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You've turned away from His teachings. That's the main point. You've turned away from obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those other things that you see in front of you as physical, external realities, Allah is in control of that. It's not necessarily because of that. He'll put whoever He wants in power, but it may be as a trial, a tribulation. He's all wise. He knows what He's doing. He's doing it for a reason. And in that, there is mercy upon you. There is wisdom. There is blessing for you, even in that. Because He's all-knowing. He knows what He's doing. So this is the lesson that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching the believers and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina. Because even in Medina with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Ahlul Kitab, there were many amongst the polytheists, the people of the book, who were jealous of the believers and especially of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. People of the book, some of them were jealous that why has he got nubuwwah? Why has he got prophethood? Why has he got revelation? Why is the Qur'an given to him? Why is he the last messenger? While some of them were waiting that again it'll be someone from amongst us. Just like in this verse, why is Talut the king? It should have been one of us. Very similar. And it's also in Surah Al-Baqarah. Wallahu yakhtassu bi rahmatihi man yasha. He says it in Surah Al-Baqarah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants His mercy or identifies somebody particular to send His mercy upon whomever He wills. It's totally up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who He makes a prophet, who He gives them revelation and blesses them, who He gives them power and wealth in the land. It's completely the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet ﷺ and his companions are in a very similar situation. There is jealousy amongst the Ahlul Kitab and other non-Muslims. Why are these people getting the benefits of Medina, the protection, the wahi, the revelation? Why is he chosen as a messenger? So as in that verse in Surah Al-Baqarah, that they don't like it whenever something good happens to you. They don't like it. It's that jealousy. It's that questioning the wisdom and knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His decision. This is what it is. So through these verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us the lesson, giving at the time the Prophet ﷺ and his followers the lessons from the past, that it's not about what you see externally. Everything is in the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever you do, when the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes for something, don't turn your back on it. Don't ask for something that you won't be able to follow through. But when you do ask for something, be firm and consistent and fulfill your promise with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even as individual Muslims, sometimes people make promises. They say, oh Allah, if you cure me from this illness, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z for you. Or Allah, if you save my child, he's in hospital, he's in intensive care, I'm going to become good for the rest of my life. Or if you give me a son, right? Somebody can't have children. If you give me a son, I will make Hajj, I will do sacrifice, I will do X, Y, and Z. A lot of Muslims make promises, but they don't fulfill it later on once Allah gives them something. So don't ask for something and say you will do something when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then once Allah grants you that thing, you turn your back. But the main lesson here is that don't fall into the mistake of the people of the past, which was more to do with over-analyzing external realities and being people of speech. Don't talk too much and then turn away when the time comes. When it comes down to follow through, you turn your back. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to understand His words and ayahs, verses from the Qur'an. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to be in His obedience as much as possible. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive our shortcomings. Jazakumullah khairan. Inshallah we'll continue next week, same time inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.